Hi, my name's Janelle and welcome back to Rosary Apparel. Today I'm back with part 2 of my DIY gift ideas. I shared part 1 of this series a couple of weeks ago, so I'll leave that linked below if you'd like even more ideas of what you could make your friends and families this holidays. But yeah, again, the projects I'll be sharing in this video would make such lovely gifts for your loved ones or for yourself this season. First up, let me show you how to make this handy box pouch that would make the perfect makeup bag or sewing kit. For this project you'll need a main and lining fabric, some wadding material, I'm just using some felt that I had for this example, and a 46cm or 8-inch zip. Start by cutting 2 rectangles of each of your main, lining and wadding fabrics that measure approximately 40 by 25 centimeters or 16 by 10 inches. And also cut out 2 smaller rectangles from your main fabric that measure approximately 10 by 8 centimeters or 4 by 3 inches. Place your main fabric rectangles onto your wadding fabric with the wrong sides together. And quilt the 2 pieces together by sewing multiple rows of stitches like this. A quick tip to keep the layers of fabric neatly together as you sew, I recommend securing the layers with safety pins. The more safety pins you use, the better, and I find the safety pins stay in place a lot better compared to just using normal, ordinary sewing pins. Line up your presser foot along the first edge of the fabric and start sewing the layers of fabric together. Keep the presser foot lined up along the previous row of stitches to ensure that each row is nice and straight, and remove any of the safety pins out of the way as you sew. Repeat this for the other main and wadding fabrics until you have 2 lovely quilted rectangles like this. Next, take the 2 smaller rectangles and fold and press the longer edges in by about 1/2 centimeter or 1/4 inch, and then fold the piece in half, enclosing all of the raw edges onto the inside. Top stitch along both edges to secure the folded edges in place. These are going to be some tags for the pouch. Next, place the zip facing down onto one of your main fabric rectangles. Then place the lining fabric on top with right sides together and sandwich the zip in place between the layers. Using a water erasable pen or some tailor's chalk, mark out approximately 1 centimeter or 1/2 inch away from the edge of the fabric rectangles on both ends. Then stitch the layers starting and finishing at the points we just marked out. Repeat for the other side of the zip. Then give all of the layers a good press with your iron, and you should now have a nicely working zip stitched in between the 2 rectangles of fabric. Top stitch along the zip, again starting and finishing approximately 1 centimeter or 1/2 inch from the edges. Next, open up the zip about 3/4 of the way and leave it open for the remainder of the project. And then flip the fabric rectangles so that the main fabrics are facing and that the lining fabrics are facing. Stitch the bottom edges together, making sure to leave a medium-sized opening along the lining edge like this. Next, fold both the rectangles of fabric so that the seam we just made is parallel to the zip, and then press the fabrics flat. Then take the fabric tags we made earlier and fold and press them in half, and place them along the zip and seam of both ends of the main fabric rectangles. Stitch the main fabric rectangles and tags in place like this. Then stitch the same for the lining rectangles. If you find the fabric is getting in the way as you sew and bunching up a little bit, I recommend using your zipper presser foot instead. Next, to give the pouch a boxy shape, flatten out one of the corners of the main fabric rectangle and use your water erasable pen or some tailor's chalk to mark out a line that is approximately 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches from the point of the corner. Stitch along this line, and then repeat for the remaining 7 corners. Once the corners have been stitched, cut away the excess fabric. Then stitch the lining and the main fabric rectangles together across the zips on both ends. And you will end up having something that looks like this. Trim away the excess zip and then turn the whole pouch right side out using the opening in the lining. Use your finger to poke out all of the corners and then stitch the opening in the lining closed. And your cute boxy pouch is complete. Next, let me show you how to make this adorable scallop tote bag. For this project, you're just going to need one type of fabric, and for mine, I'm using calico because I just don't think you can go wrong with a classic plain calico tote bag. Start by cutting 2 rectangles that measure approximately 49 centimeters or 19¼ inches by 58 centimeters or 22¾ inches from your fabric. Next, take this free scalloped edge template that I made just for this project, which you can find a link to in the description below this video, and also take a water erasable pen or some tailor's chalk, and with the 2 fabric rectangles on top of one another with right sides together, draw the scalloped edge directly onto the edges of the fabric. Mark out 6 scallops along the longer sides, leaving a 4 centimeter or 1½ inch space from the bottom edge, and then mark 5 scallops along the bottom edge like this. Next, pin the layers of fabric together and then stitch along the drawn out scalloped markings, placing your machine's needle into the fabric and lifting the presser foot to be able to turn the fabric at the sharper points of the scallop. Once stitched, trim away the excess fabric, cutting as close to the points as possible without accidentally snipping the stitches. And you should now have something that looks like this. Turn the tote bag right side out and use something like a knitting needle to push the scalloped curves out. Then give the scalloped edge a good press with your iron. Once pressed, stitch around the edges approximately 6 centimeters or 2¼ inches away from the edge of the scallops like this. Then fold and press the top raw edge in by about 2 centimeters or 3/4 inch twice so that the top edge is flush with the first scallop. To make the straps for the tote bag, you're going to need to cut out 2 long skinny rectangles that measure approximately 10 centimeters or 4 inches by 80 centimeters or 31½ inches. Then to make the straps, press the longer edges of the rectangle in by about 1 centimeter or ½ inch, and then fold and press the rectangle in half lengthways. Stitch the folded edges in place, and then top stitch along the other edge as well. Place the 2 ends of the straps into the folded pressed edge at the top of the bag. Then stitch the folded top edge of the bag in place, sewing the back and the fronts of the bag separately and sandwiching the straps in place as you sew. It's best to sew the folded edge down at the top and bottom of the fold like this for extra strength. And your adorable scalloped tote bag is complete. The next gift idea I have to share with you is a gathered tiered midi skirt. This project looks very impressive, but it's also super easy, and because of the elasticated waist, getting the sizing right for your friend or loved one is an absolute breeze. For this skirt, we're going to be working with 3 different panels or tiers. The first panel will be made up of 2 rectangles that are roughly your friend's waist measurement, by about 35 centimeters or 14 inches. The second panel is made up of one rectangle that is 3 times your friend's waist measurement by 30 centimeters or 12 inches. And the third panel is also just one rectangle that measures 4 times your friend's waist measurement by 30 centimeters or 12 inches as well. Each panel is slightly wider than the last, which will create each tier of the skirt. Start by cutting out all of the different panel pieces, and for panel 2 and 3 you may need to stitch multiple rectangles together to get the correct length like I did. You will also need to cut out 4 pocket pieces using my free pocket template, which you can find a link to in the description below this video. Start by overlocking or zigzag stitching the curved edge of the pocket pieces to prevent them from fraying. Then with right sides together, place the pocket pieces onto the panel 1 rectangles, approximately 15 centimeters or 6 inches from the top edge, and then stitch them together like this. I recommend overlocking or zigzag stitching after each seam to prevent the fabric from fraying. Next, with right sides together, place the 2 panel 1 rectangles together and stitch them together around the pockets like this. Then give the seams a good press and pop this first panel to the side for later. Take the pieces that you cut for the third panel and stitch them together to get a rectangle that's approximately 4 times the waist measurement. Then set your sewing machine to the longest possible setting and sew 2 rows of gathering stitches along the top edge of your rectangle. Do the exact same for the panel 2 rectangle. Next, take panel 3 and gently pull on the top 2 threads of the gathering rows to gather the fabric up until it's the same length as the panel 2 rectangle. Sewing 2 rows of gathering stitches helps to make this part a lot easier and also makes the gathering a lot more even once it's done as well. Once gathered all the way, fold the panel 2 rectangle in half twice to quarter it and place a pin into the fabric at each quarter point. Do the same for the gathered panel 3. This will make pinning the panels together a lot easier and will help to distribute the gathering a lot more evenly as well. Then with right sides together, pin and stitch panel 3 to the bottom edge of panel 2, matching the quartered pins together. Once stitched in place, give the gathers a good press with your iron. Next, with right sides together, fold the 2 panels together and stitch them along the sides like this. Then sew 2 rows of gathering stitches along the top edge of the second tier and then gather up the fabric until it's the same size as the panel 1 rectangle. With right sides together, pin and stitch the second and third panels to the panel 1 rectangle. Once again, give the gathers a good press with your iron. Then measure out some elastic that is approximately your friend's waist measurement and is about 2.5 centimeters or an inch wide. Fold and press the top edge of the skirt in by about 1 centimeter or half an inch. And then fold the top edge again, making sure it covers the width of the elastic you're using. Stitch the folded edge in place, making sure to leave an opening to be able to thread the elastic through. Then use a safety pin or a bodkin like I am and thread the elastic into the casing we just made, making sure to gather up the fabric as you thread the elastic through. Once thread all the way through, overlap the 2 ends of the elastic together and stitch them together with a zigzag stitch like this. And then sew the opening closed. And your skirt should now have a nicely elasticated waistband and should also be looking a little something like this. Now all that's left to do is hem the bottom edge of the skirt. I did this by overlocking or zigzag stitching the raw edge of the fabric, and then press the bottom edge in by about 1 centimeter or half an inch. And then lastly, just stitch the folded edge in place. And your lovely tiered midi skirt is complete. Lastly, let's get a little bit crafty and make this cute crocheted headscarf. For this project, you're going to need 3 different coloured 8-ply or DK yarns, a pair of scissors, and a 4mm crochet hook. Take your first yarn and start by stitching 4 chain stitches and then join them together with the slip stitch to create a loop. Then stitch another 3 chain stitches and then stitch 15 treble stitches into the loop. Join the last treble stitch to the first set of chain stitches with the slip stitch and tie off the yarn, which once done will look like this. Next, take the second yarn and slip stitch it into one of the spaces between the treble stitches we just completed. Chain 3, and then stitch another 2 treble stitches into the same space. Then chain 1 and skip the next treble space and instead stitch 3 treble stitches into the following space. Continue this pattern until you have 8 clusters of treble stitches, and then join the last chain stitch to the first set of 3 chain stitches with a slip stitch and tie off the yarn. Lastly, take your third yarn and slip stitch it into one of the spaces between the treble clusters we just completed. Then chain 3, and then stitch another 2 treble stitches into the same space. Next, to create a corner, chain 2, and then stitch 3 more treble stitches into the same space. This creates a really nicely defined corner that will turn this circle into a square. Then chain 1, and stitch 3 trebles into the next space along. Chain 1 again, and then stitch another 3 trebles into the following space, also chaining 2 and stitching 3 more trebles into the same space to create another corner. Then repeat this pattern for the remaining spaces. When you get to the end, join the last chain stitch to the first set of 3 chain stitches with a slip stitch and tie off your yarn. Then use a yarn needle to weave in the loose ends, as this helps to secure them before trimming them away. Repeat this process until you have a total of 6 squares. Next, we're going to change it up a little bit and make some triangles instead, using the exact same stitches, but this time only creating half of the square. Again, with your first yarn, start by stitching 4 chain stitches and then join them together with a slip stitch to create a loop. Then chain 3 and stitch another 7 treble stitches into the loop, which once done creates a little half circle. Then join your second yarn with a slip stitch into the space after the first set of chain stitches. Chain 3, and then stitch 2 more treble stitches into the same space. then chain 1, and then skip a space and stitch 3 treble stitches into the 3rd space instead. Keep repeating this pattern until you've stitched a final cluster of trebles into the last remaining space. Which once done should look a little something like this. Then join your 3rd yarn by slip stitching it into the space between your first set of chain stitches and the first treble stitch of the previous row. Once again, chain 3 and then stitch 2 trebles into the same space. Chain 1 and then stitch 3 trebles into the following space. Chain 1 again and then stitch a corner like we did for the squares into the next space. Then repeat the pattern for the other side to create half a square, or aka a triangle. Repeat this process until you have a total of 4 triangle pieces. Now we need to stitch all of the pieces together into a triangle shape like this. I found it was best to stitch the pieces into rows and then stitch the rows together into the triangle shape. Then to give the triangle a nice neat finish, we're going to stitch a border around the edge, and I'll leave a link to the scalloped stitch I used in the description below. And then all we need to do now is make the ties for the headscarf, which you can do by simply chaining 48 chain stitches, and then skip 3 stitches and treble into the 4th and every remaining chain stitch. Once done, you should have a rectangle of crocheted stitches that will make up the tie. Repeat to create the second tie, and then stitch both ties to the headscarf at the corners. And your adorable crocheted headscarf is complete. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that it's given you some ideas on what you can potentially make your friends and family this holidays. I have so much fun putting these videos together, and I've shared many in the past as well, so I'll leave the whole playlist down in the description below if you'd like even more inspiration of some things you could make this season. If you do end up making any of the projects I've shared in this video, then I would love to see them, so be sure to tag me at Rosary Apparel when you share your photos on Instagram. And if you did enjoy this video, it would really mean a lot to me if you could give it a like, and make sure you subscribe to this channel for more sewing type videos like this one. Have a lovely day and thanks for watching!